I don't think anybody would doubt the skill set and the level of competition at this point after watching the fight. The pace of Bantamweight, it's just something else. From Sandhagen's perspective, there was more to lose taking the fight against Umar, because he would have most probably gotten the title shot against the winner of O'Malley and Divalish. Let's just say Merab. Umar, on the other hand, is now entitled to the next title shot, rightfully. And it's kinda sad to see another step down for Sandhagen, because this guy at least give the man a title shot. But then, I guess it simply proves the intensity of the competition in the weight class now. As many would have expected, it was a difficult fight for Umar, by far the most difficult in his entire career. Cory's fast, extremely slick with his striking, top-notch grappler, submission catch is great once he's on backhand, and his cardio would hold as well. But then Umar, for the first time against one of the best, he proved himself how well he can adjust, take the pressure off, and still be able to fight while his grappling is compromised. I think this was one of the most active, not only high-paced but also full-on action and technical fights I've watched recently. If you compare the fight of Marlins and Figures that happened on the same night, you can clearly see the difference. Heavy hands, less technical and slow-paced. Cory started off with a high-caliber pressure. Especially against offensive wrestlers such as Umar, pressure is an important component. Like how an old saying goes, offense being the best means of defense. To stop the wrestlers to feel confident shooting the double legs, you must pressure, keeping them constantly putting their weight on their back foot, because once you get pressured, it's much more difficult to shoot. Cory opened up with leg kicks, and it was quite successful, I would say. In the mid-fight, I think by the end of second round, I really thought Umar's legs would be compromised, seeing him switch stances and seeing how much it swelled up. But also, what I noticed was how Umar constantly doesn't let Cory pressure him. In the case of leg kicks, you can see how Umar kicks Cory back right after he eats one. Obviously, as a principle, he would have wanted to deliver damage and compromise Cory's movement, but more than that, it served Cory not to pressure him nakedly. When it comes to lightweight, momentum is very important in MMA fights. I mean, of course in all sports, but when the sole purpose of the sports is to deliver damage, your opponent should never feel so comfortable in closing the distance. If you look at the stats, leg kicks amounted 27 times on Cory and 23 times on Umar, which is quite evened up, and most of the time, when one landed, another fired back immediately. As the fight progressed, you can also see Umar catching the legs, eventually leading Cory having to wage more with his hands than the kicks. There are a couple of points I would like to stress. First would be how they fought switching stances. Throughout the fight, both fighters changed stances a lot, from Cory's perspective to pressure and to cut the cage, to align Umar so he can touch him with his hand. But also, Umar kept staying very busy to push Cory off, alleviating the pressure and to be back in the center of octagon again. I think up to the third round, Cory's pressure was very good. Now, the problem was that he couldn't capitalize successfully after he pushed Umar towards the cage. Well, props to Umar, of course, but I would say the major reason was due to Cory not throwing enough body kicks. When Cory pressures Umar conventional, and Umar, who predominantly stood southpaw for the first 2 rounds, Sandhagen's pressure seemed to work well. But then, he couldn't trap Umar completely and failed to land effective damage considering the pressure. So this is what I think. Cory's problem is that he's very well-rounded, but sometimes too cautious. And I think the reason may be that he knows he doesn't really possess haymaker. This is a common feature for many fighters who are light-footed with fluid movements. Because he doesn't have the knockout power, though he successfully cuts off the cage, becomes heavy on the front leg, but too cautious to let go of his hand. So basically what it means is that for Cory, eating the punch in a safe angle is what comes first in his mind, which overall makes him more defensive, taking less chances than seeking to knock out his opponent. So in the case of this fight, Umar's straight touched Cory definitely more, and it did more damage as well. But then, whether Cory can throw bombs or not, I think it would have been more effective to push Umar completely towards the cage, utilizing more of body kicks, just for the pressure's sake as well. Now, up to the third round, I think Cory was fighting fairly well. And when Umar shined really was starting from the fourth, right after securing the third with his takedown. Because Cory thought he was losing the round, he needed to throw more damages, which led to prematurely closing the distance, eventually led to allowing more damage for himself. Umar is fast with his hands, man. You can see them in a couple of sequences when both exchange hands in a pocket. Cory landing the lead hand first, then Umar touching more with his combination. And you can also see the difference in damage as well. In this point, I think we all can say Umar's striking is tight. Seeing him stepping back, being able to throw leg kicks, countering check hooks, following up with combinations, throwing body kicks, taking off the pressure for 25 minutes, I think he proved a lot in this fight. But then, Umar's success in striking was also due to Cory's round management. Maybe if Cory was not so concerned with judges and the scorecards, I think the fight could have also turned a bit different. So towards the end, you can clearly see Cory trying to go for head. As far as I know, Umar finds more comfort in striking than wrestling. I don't think many people doubted Umar's striking ability in the first place, except if he can keep up the pace for 25 minutes. So watching this fight, definitely his cardio is checked. His wrestling, however, the conditioning is great, resilience also good, transition, taking the back, also great. But I see he's not as dominant as Merab in keeping the position or ragdolling opponents. I would say the biggest reason obviously would be his strength and size. But let's be clear, against Cory Sandhagen, it's really difficult to keep him down. So what I noticed is that Umar doesn't keep the hooks tight, therefore leading the opponents to have enough space to adjust their bodies. For an instance, second round, he took Cory down smoothly. But then, if you see where his hip is positioned and how the hook is in, you can see it's not so tight. Then he goes holding on to Cory's arm, which I think was also premature. He crossed well Cory's leg, but there was also enough space for Cory to be able to adjust his hip. Similar grappling sequences in the first round, fourth pretty much throughout the entire fight. Which getting us questioning, if Merab takes the belt, would Umar be able to grapple against him? I'm not so sure. A couple of weeks back, we all watched how Leon is getting ragdolled by Belal Muhammad. And by far, the biggest difference was in the strength itself than the technique. Umar is definitely fast, striking as well crisp, and demonstrated himself that he belongs there for 25 minutes. But also proved that he is breakable. We'll have to see how O'Malley's fight goes, but most definitely O'Malley would be an easier fight for Umar. For Cory Sandhagen, it's quite difficult. So I'm hearing UFC is trying to match up Figgy and Yan, which kinda leaves him in a weird spot, because from top 5, only Chito is open, but they fought already. And I think Cory doesn't want a long layoff, so we'll have to see how the fight goes in 306. Thanks for watching the video, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you with another analysis.